date on the story.
Breaking news for you. French TV reporting that 30 people are dead after a truck crashed into a crowd of people celebrating Bastille Day in Nice, France. They are also saying that the truck occupants and the police exchanged gunfire, at least according to at least one local media outlet there. The gunshots apparently heard before the truck crashed into the crowds. You're now looking at live pictures. The police chief there calls the event, quote, an attack. We want to also remind you, of course, that France still in a state of emergency since the Paris attacks that almost took 150 lives last year. Apparently, a white lorry smashed into a crowd there again to celebrate what they call French National Day. Most of the Western world calls Bastille Day. 2 days after the revolution began, the storming of the Bastille. Here to join us now, I've got Lieutenant Steve Rogers in studio with me and Major General Robert Scales on the phone as well. General Scales, I'll start with you. You know, it's obviously a little early, although these sort of tactics have been used by terror groups before. This is a huge crowd. It represented Western national pride. In this particular case, the French Revolution. It would have made for a perfect political statement. We don't obviously want to get too far ahead here, but right now, a lot of people are speculating that this is yet another terror attack.
Yeah, that's right, Charles. You know, this is one of the reasons why here in D.C., the security services were so intense about our 4th of July, which is essentially the same type of holiday as Bastille Day. Charles, I've been to that promenade, and it is purely for pedestrians. And if a terrorist group didn't have access to explosives and didn't have automatic rifles in their possession, God forbid the surest way for an Islamic group to take out a large number of people on the most important day in French history would be to drive a lorry down that very narrow, congested pedestrian mall. No way that the citizens standing there watching the fireworks could possibly have gotten out of the way in time. I know that number 30 killed with 100 wounded sounds a little bit incredulous, but if you've been to that promenade and walked down it and could view in your mind's eye a truck moving at 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, you could see how you could do that kind of damage.
Hey, General Scales, as you were speaking, we have photographs of the reported truck there. Obviously, a real big-sized truck, and to your point, a promenade where pedestrians, revelers are out there by the thousands celebrating, not paying attention, and here this comes barreling down on the crowd. Maybe we'll look back in retrospect and hope that and pray that it's only 30 lives lost. And again, it's still very early. You know, here's the thing, Lieutenant Rogers, Steve Rogers. I remember after the World Trade Center attacks and how Wall Street changed with the structures. You know, we're talking soft targets again. Yes. And they put all of these barriers in front of the New York Stock Exchange. They decorated it to make it look not as intimidating or militaristic. More recently, malls in my area. You know, I live in Bergen County, New Jersey, one of the wealthiest counties in the country. Even malls have adopted this, you know, where you have these barriers, you know, obviously they're there to stop these sort of attacks, but this is the new reality we're living in.
Charles, make no mistake about it, this is a terrorist attack, and the general is absolutely right. He has described to all of us new weapons of war. You can't get the guns in, you can't get the samurai swords in, you can't get the explosives in, but by golly, you can use a vehicle to take out a lot of people. And it goes to the point that we're going to have policies in this country, militarily and political, to deal with terrorism. Look, we don't know if this is a homegrown terrorist. We don't know if there's a foreign connection, but it is a terrorist attack.
So, General Scales, let's just jump to that conclusion, just to say, what do we do now? What happens now? Because to Steve's point, we've seen airplanes used as weapons. You know, we've seen these sort of attacks before. it feels like there's always going to be a soft target. There's always going to be some form of celebration, targets, symbolic targets, and so what happens? How do we go? Where do we go from here?
Well, Charles, to use a crass analogy, you cannot play in the National Hockey League with only a goalie. You can have the finest goalie in hockey, and eventually a puck is going to get past. And the poor French have had 4 or 5, now almost 6 pucks get past, and innocent French civilians have died. The only way to take action that's going to be permanent and lasting is to play hockey with an offensive team, to take the fight to ISIS, to destroy their centers of gravity, to collapse Raqqa in Syria and Mosul in Iraq, and take out their heartland so you don't have that psychological attraction for young men who want to destroy the West. It's the only long-term solution.
We saw a surge in military enrollment after Paris. We saw France step up their military efforts, but still the West hasn't done what I keep hearing every expert, Steve Rogers, say. We haven't gone in and annihilated Raqqa. We haven't gone and annihilated the enemy where we know they are and where we know these orders are coming from.
And Charles, in addition to that, in defense of our homeland, we have to increase our intelligence capabilities. I said it before, I'll say it again. Most police officers and local police departments do not have the manpower, they don't have the knowledge, they just don't have what it takes because the government won't provide them what it takes to combat terrorism.
Guys, let's go, let's take a listen in to Sky News. They're on the scene to get more of a local understanding.
Enjoying themselves, and there were huge celebrations prepared for Nice. I've been down there for Bastille Day myself in the past, and fireworks displays take place right along the Promenade des Anglais. And remember, we're still under a state of emergency here. That was due to be lifted at the end of July. I'd be very surprised if it is lifted now because of what's happened. Lots and lots of anti-terrorist police and army on the streets. But again, they failed to stop what, again, is clearly a terrorist attack.
Well, the regional newspaper Nice Matin quoting its own reporter at the scene saying there were many injured people and blood on the street. It published a photograph of a damaged long-distance delivery truck. That photo, of course, which we've also put out, riddled with bullets as they described it. And I suppose the police would have wanted to neuter the driver of that vehicle as swiftly as possible.
Yes, how do you stop a lorry coming towards you at speed? There aren't many ways, are there? You have to shoot the driver. I think that's what they would have to have done. And that looks as though, does look as though that's what they have done. They would have been trained to do that. And that's the way they brought it to a halt, but of course not before. It ran over lots of innocent people. It was right next to the Promenade des Anglais. I've seen the pictures. I recognise exactly where it happened, very close to major hotels, restaurants, bars as well. And again, looking at those horrific pictures, which I know you've done as well, it looks as though lots of people of all different types have been mown down indiscriminately by this driver, who is now dead.
And once again, we see families on the streets, and it was young people in Paris, wasn't it, that were the target. We've seen people carrying their babies away from this. This is an event in which you would take young people who would love the fireworks displays.
Absolutely. It's the softest target you can hope for any terrorist. They're not trying any specific strategic targets. They're just mowing down anybody in sight. It's the most cowardly form of terrorism. Transport hubs, football stadiums, bars, restaurants, and tonight a lovely beachside promenade in a tourist city at the height of the tourist season.
And in fact, the tourist season really has just started, hasn't it? The start of July, they call it is it the red travel days, when suddenly people are on the move before the Parisians come in August. I mean, would this have been filled with tourists, do you think?
Absolutely filled. I mean, what people do during the Bastille weekend is take the whole weekend off effectively. It's a public holiday today, Thursday. They won't bother with going to work on Fridays, so they'll take the 4 days off. Perhaps even come back on Monday, take Monday off as well. That's traditional. That's what happens. It's a long weekend. And the trains and planes and everything else, cars down to Nice will be absolutely packed today. and there'd be maximum bookings. And again, a lot of people would be going down there specifically to celebrate what is normally a pretty wonderful night in French cities. People celebrating the founding of the modern France, really, the 1789 revolution. That's what Bastille Day is all about. It commemorates the storming of the Bastille. And people are very, very proud of it. And it's a time for fun and laughter and holiday. And again, those responsible would have known all that. They know they would have got maximum publicity, and they could have caused maximum devastation against the softest targets possible.
The Paris attacks were so shocking, weren't they? What will this do to the mood, do you think, of the French people in the sense of feeling under siege or under attack?
Well, it will be terrible. Again, one always hopes that you move on from these terrible events, don't you? Last year was bookmarked by two terrible atrocities, the Charlie Hebdo attacks in January and the November the 13th attacks. And lots have been said and done since then. A parliamentary report has just been unveiled into the November attack. Of course, we had the normal fine words from politicians and indeed intelligence chiefs about how they were getting to the heart of the problem. There was going to be more surveillance. There was going to be more efforts to clamp down on
That's Sky News describing, again, a national holiday, the French National Day. In fact, 2 days after the French Revolution began, the storming of the Bastille, seen as a revolutionary moment in the Western world, one obviously celebrated, and the commentators talking about how many people there took the day off. Kids were there, entire families, also the beginning of tourist season. So 30 dead so far from a white lorry that rolled into the crowd, and perhaps before that, gunfire exchange between the occupant or occupants and police. Now, there's a lot of scuttlebutt out there that this is ISIS, and it's being backed up by at least 2 ISIS accounts on Twitter that say that this is in retaliation for the death of Abu Omar al-Shashini. He's a Georgian Chechnyan commander. You all sort of remember him. We'll have a photo in a minute. The guy with the red beard we thought we killed several months ago was confirmed just yesterday by ISIS. Many are saying this is in retaliation for his death. And with that in mind, General Scales, if we go in there half-assed and we kill 1 or 2, because there's been a revolving door of commanders, of leaders. I've lost track of the names. I remember this guy because he was Chechen and he had a unique look with the red beard. But if we just go in there halfway, they're just going to retaliate like this over and over again. When do we go in there with a mission to absolutely seek, destroy, and rid the world of this scourge once and for all?
Is that for me, Charles?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think we're trying to do it by baby steps, Charles.
Yeah, we can't do it by baby steps anymore, can we? I mean, really?
Charles, there is no choice. This president will not do it. We have to wait till after the election to construct an entirely new national security policy that doesn't just go after pinpricks, but takes on ISIS as a national security campaign that takes on ISIS from Morocco all the way through India and Pakistan, and commits the nation to what is, in essence, a country that's declared war on us, but we haven't declared war on them. We have no choice. And now we see that NATO, reluctant as they are, will have to join us. Just look at what's happening in France and the rest of Europe. The day is going to come very soon when Turkey, Saudi Arabia, France, hopefully Britain, will join us in a coalition to simply take down ISIS in one large, concentrated, offensive campaign.
You know, the key there, of course, Steve, we're not fighting a country, which makes this different than past encounters. Which means NATO, of course, has to change and find a way to be involved in this in a way that's applicable to modern day warfare. But we are at war, which hasn't been declared by a country. There were reports earlier that the Obama administration has actually reached out to Russia and talking about joint bomber strikes and joint command and control centers in Syria. This is a 180 change. It would be a 180 change. And maybe you think ultimately this is what has to happen, to General Scales' point. America, Russia, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, all the other players combined together once and for all to destroy ISIS.
Absolutely correct, Charles. Russia has to be part of the equation. It has to be a shock and awe campaign. And look, the president said months ago ISIS is on the run. What he didn't say is that they're on the run over here to the Western world to fight in our streets, and they're here. But the general is absolutely right. We either go in to win or don't go in at all, because they have sent a signal to us. They will strike us anytime, any place, and use any weapon to hurt us.
And you have to believe also, as we start to annihilate them, they're going to become desperate, and we would have to expect embrace for more scenes like the ones we're watching right now.
Yeah, exactly, but they cannot beat the United States of America. And if we do have Russia and we do have the rest of the Western world, they will be annihilated in a short period of time.
All right, folks, please keep it right here. Again, 30 people are dead in France after a truck drives into a crowd, mows everyone down, perhaps also gunfire. We're getting more details for you. We'll be right back.